The story begins on a cold evening, the sky fully engulfed by dark clouds as an S-ranked warrior party stands at the edge of a cliff. Poor Diane, the healer of the group, finds himself at the center of attention as his comrades call him out as useless. The group pushes him towards the edge, attempting to cast him off, but by sheer luck, he manages to grab onto a protruding rock. He briefly considers his life choices. His fingers start slipping, and for a fleeting moment, he wonders if all those push-ups he skipped are finally coming back to haunt him. Barely hanging, he struggles to understand why this is happening. As he dangles from the cliff, the party leader, Segret, looks down at him with an expression of disdain and calls the situation miserable. Desperate, Diane demands an explanation. The truth is laid bare before him. He is being abandoned due to his weakness. The party has found a new member, Crayola, who is deemed far more capable. Unlike Diane, who has done nothing but heal others without contributing to battle, Crayola possesses not only healing abilities but also offensive firepower, making her a valuable asset. The leader reminds Diane that he has had to save his life countless times, and though he acknowledges the importance of healers, he needs one who can also defend themselves. Diane's anger flares as he recalls the truth of the situation. With no party leader to stop them, his party leader has revealed his true colors. As he mentions Yuki, another member of their group, had stepped on a teleportation trap and is now unable to join them. This betrayal has been carefully planned. His voice trembling with fury, Diane accuses the party leader of exploiting the situation. Unfazed, the party leader simply bids him farewell. Diane pleads for his life, but the leader coldly declares that he should die a miserable death. With those final words, he unleashes his firepower upon Diane. Flames engulf his entire body, lighting up the surroundings with a hellish glow. The heat sears his flesh, and in agonizing pain, he loses his grip, plummeting into the abyss below. Sometime later, Diane regains consciousness. The fact that he is still alive shocks him. However, his body is severely burned, and every movement sends waves of unbearable pain through him. As his vision clears, he realizes that his body is covered in sticky silk. His burns feel like he was roasted over an open flame, and worst of all, he's lying on a giant web, not just any web, but one belonging to an abyssal spider. Dread fills him as he notices several monstrous spiders approaching him. His instincts scream at him to move, and as one of the spiders lunges at him, he reacts. Though injured, he unsheathes his dagger and strikes back, hurling the creature away from him. More spiders begin to close in, their many eyes gleaming hungrily. Diane refuses to let himself be devoured by them. Summoning every ounce of strength left in his broken body, he fights back against each monstrous foe, cutting them down one by one. Finally, he falls from the web, but manages to land on one of the spiders, using its body to cushion his impact. He collapses onto the ground and quickly assesses his injuries. His arm is broken. With no other choice, he begins to heal himself, slowly mending his bones. However, the burns covering his body are another matter entirely. As he attempts to heal them, he suddenly coughs up blood. A sharp pain shoots through him as he realizes the real danger. During the fight, he was poisoned by the spider's bites, and in this pain-upon-pain situation, he taunts himself saying, "Oh, fantastic, it is poison. Just what I needed." But panic sets in as he understands his dilemma. He only has enough magic left to either heal his burns or purge the poison from his system. If he chooses incorrectly, his life could end here. His thoughts drift to the past, to Yuki, the friend who pulled him from their hometown and set him on the path of adventure. They made friends, dreaming of a grand journey together. But the reality was different. Yuki was an S-ranked warrior, their companions A-ranked, and Diane, just a B-ranked healer. He recalls Yuki's words, how she had always wanted to see the unseen, to witness things no one else had ever laid eyes upon. And now he wonders if she will continue her journey without him, achieving her dreams while he fades into oblivion. As his body weakens further, blood pools beneath him, a grim reminder of how fragile his life has become. His vision blurs, but then something catches his eye, a faint light emanating from the depths of the canyon. Spotting the glow, his first thought comes, as either that's salvation or he just found a new, more exciting way to die. With nothing left to lose, he pushes forward. If death is certain, he might as well see what awaits. Gritting through the pain, he stumbles toward the mysterious glow. When he reaches it, his weary eyes widen. Before him stands a creature beyond imagination. Wounded and exhausted, he gazes at a magnificent sight, a dragon. Despite the pain, a faint smile crosses his lips. It is rare for him to see a dragon totally worth almost dying, and for a brief moment, His heart swells with joy. He thinks about how Yuki would have been delighted by this sight. He recalls hearing that such dragons usually rest in sacred mountains, far from reach. As he watches, his weary eyes take in the dragon's labored breathing. It is struggling, its massive form rising and falling with each breath. The sight takes him back to a distant memory, a moment from his past. He stands beside a wounded horse, preparing to heal it when Yuki calls out to him. Her voice is firm yet familiar as she reminds him that he should prioritize healing their party members first, as his magic is limited. The horse can wait. Dian glances at his comrades and notes that their injuries are minor. He responds with quiet resolve, saying that while his companions have fought well, the real credit belongs to the horse. It was the one who had saved them at the critical moment. Before he can say more, his ex-party leader irritated voice cuts through the air, demanding to know whether the horse is more important than the team members. Yuki quickly silences him before turning to Dian. She approaches him with an understanding expression, acknowledging his compassion but reminding him that they still have many more dungeons to clear. She knows he cares, but they cannot afford to waste time. Hearing her words, Dian nods and apologizes. Yuki gently places a hand on his head in a gesture of approval, pleased with his willingness to listen. But Dian, ever true to his nature, stands up once more and casts an extra healing spell on the horse. He tells Yuki that he has always admired this part of her, the way she understands him yet remains practical. As his mind returns to the present, Dian's focus shifts back to the dragon before him. He wonders why such a creature would be lying in this place, but a more pressing realization dawns on him. It is injured. Without hesitation, despite his own broken body, he raises his trembling hand toward the dragon. He reminds himself of the vow he made as a healer, to never abandon someone in suffering. Summoning the last remnants of his strength, he casts a healing spell on the dragon. The moment his magic takes effect, he sees a response. The dragon stirs slightly. Relief washes over him, bringing unexpected tears to his eyes. Yet, along with those tears, blood trickles from his mouth, his injuries far worse than before. His body gives in, and he collapses onto the cold ground, unconscious. As darkness surrounds him, a voice, majestic and deep, echoes in his fading consciousness. Someone is thanking him. The presence is so close that he can hear its breath. And then, silence. When his eyes flutter open, he is met with an astonishing sight. Standing before him is a breathtakingly beautiful woman, unclothed, gazing down at him with gratitude. Shock overtakes him as he struggles to process what he is seeing. Seeing her beauty, his brain, still recovering, prioritizes the most important question, that how do I look instead of how am I alive? Stammering, he asks if she was the one who saved him. The woman nods and explains that while she did save his life, he was the one who saved hers first. It was only fair to return the favor. Confusion clouds his mind. He is filled with countless questions, but the most immediate one slips from his lips. How could such a thing be possible? His gaze lingers on her, and as the realization of her state dawns on him, he is struck speechless. He hesitantly asks why she is unclothed. The woman, unfazed, replies that she does not possess clothing, nor does she require it. Dian is unable to recover from his shock. He tells her that he has never encountered someone like her before, and internally screaming that why is clothing not a priority here? In response, she reveals a truth that sends a shiver through him. She is not a mere person. She has been imprisoned here for a long time. Before he can react, her form shifts before his very eyes, transforming into a magnificent dragon. Dian stares in stunned disbelief as the dragon introduces herself. Her name is Eldora. Once more, she expresses her gratitude for his aid. Then, shrinking back into her human form, she stands before him again. This time, she asks for his name. Still overwhelmed, Dian struggles to maintain his composure. Unable to meet her gaze, he urges her to put something on. He admits that it is difficult to hold a conversation while she remains as she is. Eldora acknowledges his request and dons the clothing he provides. Finally regaining his senses, Dian introduces himself. He thanks her for saving his life and asks how she managed to do so. Eldora lifts a finger to his lips, silencing him before revealing the method. She transferred her blood into his body through a kiss. Dian turns redder than his burns, completely speechless, while Eldora remains calm like she just shared a weather update. She explains further that there is no reason for him to feel flustered. The blood of a dragon holds powerful healing properties. It can cure poison and accelerate the healing of wounds. Hearing this, a tiny part of him wonders if he can breathe fire, then immediately decides against testing it, unless he wants to become extra crispy. He exhales, commenting that it sounds like something out of an ancient legend. As he looks at himself, he realizes that this explains the overwhelming power he now feels within his body. A thought lingers in his mind. He turns to Eldora and asks how she sustained her wounds. A shadow of sadness crosses her face before she recounts her story. Once every 1,000 years, a dragon king is chosen from among the divine dragons to lead their race. Eldora was selected as a candidate, but not all were pleased with the decision. Those who opposed it betrayed and wounded her. Diane listens in stunned silence. The injustice she suffered feels eerily similar to his own betrayal. Eldora continues, explaining that she barely managed to escape, fleeing into this dungeon. By the time she reached safety, she could no longer move. But in truth, she never desired the position of Dragon King. She had already planned to renounce her candidacy. Hearing her words, he clenches his fists and rises to his feet. He understands her pain all too well. His resolve hardens, and he turns to her with determination in his eyes. He asks if she wishes to come with him, for he cannot escape this dungeon alone. Eldora kneels, resting her hands on the ground before him. With quiet certainty, she agrees. She acknowledges the bond between them. He saved her, and in return, she saved him. Yet she declares that her debt is not fully repaid. No matter what trials come, she will stand by his side. Diane is overwhelmed by emotion. His eyes well up with tears, and Eldora, concerned, asks if something is wrong. He shakes his head and assures her that these are tears of joy. With newfound resolve, he makes a promise to protect her as she has protected him. And in that moment, a friendship is forged. Together, they take their first steps forward, embarking on a journey that neither could have foreseen. Who could have known that this fateful meeting would mark the beginning of Diane's rise? Meanwhile, the remaining members of the S-ranked warrior party travel the mountainous path. They reflect on how much easier things have become now that they have rid themselves of their so-called useless healer, feeling proud of their genius plan. A sense of relief washes over them, believing they no longer need to worry about him. However, Cindy reminds them that they have yet to conquer the dungeon. The party leader, with a smirk, dismisses her concern, stating that whether or not it leads to the deepest floor is irrelevant. They cannot proceed any further now that they have thrown him into that pit. Cindy, her expression turning sinister, remarks on how smoothly everything unfolded, almost too easily. The party leader nods in agreement, admitting that no one would have thought everything, including the part where Yuki-san was separated from them, was part of the plan all along. As he considers Yuki's deep attachment to Diane, he knew that she would also lead the party. He relishes in the success of their teleportation trap, which not only removed Yuki from the equation but also allowed them to eliminate Diane in her absence. They discuss how it was troublesome to predict the location of the teleportation circle. Now they only need to wait for her return so they can tell her everything. Just then, the ground trembles beneath them, as if an earthquake has struck. The mountain itself seems to split apart, and from within the depths, Yuki casually obliterates a mountainside and steps through the dust like this is her daily routine. Her face seems like an angry war goddess. The party tenses, believing an enemy has appeared, but upon recognizing Yuki, they mask their unease with a cold welcome. They tell her they have been searching for her and express their relief that she is unharmed. Segred, however, begins to sweat. He is well aware of Yuki's capabilities as an S-ranked warrior. Single-handedly, she has altered the very structure of the dungeon, something supernatural in itself. He knows that anyone who stands by Yuki's side is guaranteed glory. Without wasting time, Yuki demands to know Diane's whereabouts. Without hesitation, they relay their fabricated story. But when she asks precisely where Diane was teleported, they falter, unable to provide an answer. Without waiting for further explanation, she sets off in search of him. Cindy moves to stop her, warning that this is an S-ranked dungeon and she cannot go alone. Yuki, undeterred, declares that she will not return until she finds Diane. With that, she vanishes into the depths of the dungeon. Cindy watches her leave, fear creeping into her thoughts. What if Yuki finds Diane's body? Segret, remaining composed, reassures Cindy, while Crayola interjects, stating that she sensed something ominous down that cliff. It was likely a monster's nest, and there is no way an average man like Diane could have survived. She confidently asserts that he has probably already been devoured, leaving no evidence behind. The party leader calms Cindy further, telling her to leave everything to him. If Yuki remains under his control now or in the future, Cindy need only follow her. Cindy agrees, promising to do just that as they prepare to leave the area. Meanwhile, deep within the cavern, Eldora voices her concern that they are only venturing further into the dungeon. Diane, understanding the situation, responds that climbing back up from where he fell is not a viable option. Eldora acknowledges this, admitting that flying in this space is difficult for her. She agrees with Diane's judgment. Diane, ever the strategist, states that their only way out is to defeat the dungeon boss. If they succeed, they will automatically be teleported out along with everyone else inside. He contemplates how, if he were alone, he might have given up already. But now, with a courageous companion willing to fight alongside him, he feels a renewed sense of determination. His mind drifts, thinking about Eldora's strength and her undeniable cuteness. Eldora, her expression curious, tilts her head and asks what he is thinking about. Caught off guard, Diane hesitates before admitting that he was thinking about her. Eldora tells him that if he has any questions, he should simply ask her directly. Taking the opportunity, Diane inquires how she is able to trust a human so easily and how she can transform into one. Eldora explains that while she does not fully understand the specifics, she has spent a great deal of time in human form. The reason she reveals is that the sacred mountains where dragons reside lack enough space for all dragons to exist in their true form. To accommodate each other, they take on human forms instead. However, she confesses that she does not wish to return to those mountains. Instead, she wants to live among humans in a village and asks if Diane will help her achieve that. Without hesitation, Diane assures her that it is not a big deal. He will certainly help her. Hearing this, Eldora beams with happiness. Diane, however, ponders his own situation. Once he leaves this dungeon, he must stay away from all the places he once frequented to avoid those who betrayed him. As he thinks, Eldora urges him to keep moving. But he suddenly stops, asking her to wait. Pressing his fingers to his forehead, he activates his powers to conduct a deep search operation. When Eldora questions him, he reveals that he is scanning the path ahead for incoming enemies. To his astonishment, his vision extends far beyond its previous limits. Testing his enhanced senses, he marvels at how far he can see now. Then, for absolutely no reason, he squints at a rock like he's trying to unlock X-ray vision. He thinks that where he could once sense only a few meters ahead, he now sees up to 200 or 300 meters away. He realizes that a battle awaits them further down this path, a battle they cannot avoid. The vision expert turns to Eldora and asks if a dragon's blood enhances a human's magical abilities. This question seems to make Eldora slightly uneasy, and she admits that she has never given her blood to a human before. Concerned, she asks if he feels anything unusual. He reassures her that he feels perfectly fine, wondering if he'll grow wings or start hoarding gold, which brings a smile to Eldora's face. Encouraged, she will tell him if anything weird happens, and they should keep moving forward. Their difficult journey resumes, and soon they encounter a massive swarm of giant ants. The hero immediately identifies them as B-ranked monsters, but he explains that if they are in a group of 3 or more, their threat level is elevated to A rank. He contemplates his own abilities, realizing that as a B-ranked individual, he might be able to handle them. Eldora, curious, asks if he thinks she can defeat them. Instead of answering directly, he turns the question back on her, wondering if she believes she can. Without hesitation, Eldora leaps toward the attacking ants. As they rush toward her, she generates a powerful gust of wind and then jumps high, landing a crushing blow on an ant's head with her foot, instantly killing it. Demonstrating incredible skill, she systematically takes down each ant with precision. Their severed body parts scatter in various directions as she efficiently eliminates them all. Our healer watches in awe, stunned by the display of dragon power, thinking he was worried about protecting her, but being honest, he is the fragile one here. He had always known that the skulls of these ants were incredibly hard, requiring a strong sword to cause even slight damage, yet Eldora had crushed them effortlessly with just her feet. He remarks that Eldora belongs with S-ranked adventurers. Curious, she asks what S-rank means. He explains that adventurers are divided into ranks. He further elaborates, saying that dungeons also have ranks depending on their level of difficulty, and since this one is an S-ranked dungeon, it is a place meant for S-ranked groups. Eldora then asks about his own rank. Embarrassed, he admits that he is only a B-rank adventurer. He goes on to explain that the leader of his former party was S-ranked, the other members were A-ranked, and he was the only B-ranked member. In this ranking system, F rank is the lowest. He continues, revealing that his previous party had expelled him because they were all incredibly strong, and he was not a skilled fighter. Feeling emotional, he confesses that if it were not for Eldora, he would not have survived this far. He worries that moving forward, he might become a burden to her. Hearing this, Eldora grabs his hand and reassures him, stating that they are friends and friends help each other, while he is thinking that it seems like she will next pats his head like a lost puppy, and if this happens he might actually cry. From now on she will support him in battle, just as he supports her with healing. Just as he had worried about her feet earlier, it was clear that he was already fulfilling a supportive role. This realization makes him think that Eldora is unlike the other party members who betrayed him. Determined, he resolves to give his best for her sake. He expresses his gratitude and activates his magic search ability to detect any enemies ahead. Eldora finds this skill extremely useful, and he informs her that there are many enemies ahead. However, with Eldora by his side, he feels confident that they can overcome anything together. As he scans the area, his vision finally locks onto something. What he sees through his search ability can only be one thing: the dungeon boss. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he informs Eldora that this boss is far more powerful than he had anticipated. Since this is an S-ranked dungeon, it is evident that their opponent will be an S-ranked boss. The dungeon stands as a mysterious structure that exists all over the world. Adventurers enter its depths, seeking to conquer its challenges in hopes of achieving higher ranks and honing their skills to greater heights. Some hypothesize that the dungeon is both a test and a blessing, placed upon this world by the gods to prepare humanity for an inevitable, terrifying calamity that will one day descend upon them. Eldora, her companion, and our healer stand at the gate of the dungeon, lost in thought. He feels sweat trickling down his face, his nerves betraying his calm facade. When Eldora asks if he is all right, he reassures her, but deep inside, he battles the overwhelming pressure of this particular dungeon, something he has never experienced before, despite conquering many others. Unlike him, Eldora appears completely unfazed, without a single hint of concern for what lies ahead. Meanwhile, Eldora, focused on the battle ahead, senses a strong enemy beyond the gate. She suspects that this must be the boss Diane had mentioned earlier. Unaware of his distraction, she continues to clean his face as they talk. Afterward, Diane thanks her but silently resolves that the first thing he immediately plans to buy her some proper clothes, purely for practical reasons, of course. He wipes his own face, gathering his determination, and steels himself for the upcoming battle. He tells Eldora that he will support her with everything he has, but pleads that if things become too dangerous, she must retreat. With those final words, they push open the dungeon door and step inside. Darkness swallows them whole. Beyond the entrance, nothing but pitch-black void surrounds them, with the only source of light coming from the open door behind them. As they walk forward, the door slams shut behind them. He resists the urge to dramatically check if it's locked, because of course it is. Instead, he just sighs and accepts his fate. Their eyes adjust to the dim surroundings, revealing massive stone structures. A single path leads through the center of these ruins, lined with towering columns and ancient carvings. Eldora suddenly points ahead, alerting Diane. He follows her gaze and sees a colossal figure seated on a throne, shrouded in shadow. Recognition dawns upon him. This is the dungeon master. The giant boss lets out a deafening roar as it rises from its seat, sending tremors through the dungeon floor. Diane feels a wave of panic wash over him. Eldora, on the other hand, takes on a battle-ready stance, unfazed by the looming enemy. The giant suddenly lunges toward them, lifting an enormous sword that seemingly materializes in its grip. Diane barely has time to react before the massive weapon comes crashing down toward them. That's when he knows that he is very underqualified for this job. Realization strikes him. This monstrous being has just created a weapon out of nothing. Eldora shouts a warning, but before Diane can fully process what is happening, the giant's blade swings down with terrifying speed. Pain sears through him as his arm is severed from his body. Blood gushes out in a crimson fountain as his severed limb flies across the chamber. He stumbles back, gasping in agony, the shock of the sudden attack overwhelming him. Fury ignites within Eldora as she rushes forward to retaliate. Meanwhile, Diane struggles to comprehend how it happened so quickly. He was distracted for only a fraction of a second, and in that instant, his arm was cut clean off. After losing his arm in the blink of an eye, he prepares for his slow, agonizing recovery, only for his arm to reattach itself like it's just another Tuesday. He flexes it experimentally, half expecting a refund policy on his healing powers, realizing that he must stabilize himself if he wants to properly cast healing magic and provide Eldora with the backup she needs. But then something astonishing happens. His healing ability surges with newfound strength, and before his very eyes, his severed arm reattaches itself as if nothing had ever happened. He stares in disbelief, then quickly assesses his body. He feels no pain, no residual weakness, just power. He realizes that his healing ability, like his search power, has grown exponentially. He owes this strength to Eldora. Because of her, he has been given a new life, and with it he has gained overwhelming power. No longer just a helpless healer, he is now capable of fighting. With renewed determination, he rises to his feet, ready to face the dungeon master once more. The battle continues with fierce intensity as Eldora rushes toward the towering giant. She leaps into the air with incredible agility, flipping mid-air before driving her foot down onto the giant's head with full force. The impact is devastating, dealing a critical blow to the monstrous foe. However, the giant is not so easily defeated. In retaliation, it swings a massive attack toward Eldora, but she skillfully evades it, dodging just in time. She quickly assesses the situation and remarks that this giant is exceptionally tough. Defeating it will require a big opening, a chance to strike at its most vulnerable moment. Diane, determined, tells her to leave that part to him. Without hesitation, he draws his dagger and dashes toward the enemy, preparing to execute his plan. He knows he must stay focused this time. There is no room for error. This battle is different. He is stronger now, and he must prove it. As he sprints toward the giant, the monstrous being swings his colossal sword at him. But Diane, with his heightened abilities, can see every movement clearly. With incredible reflexes, he raises his small dagger and blocks the giant's massive strike. The sheer force of the clash is tremendous, yet Diane stands his ground, counterattacking swiftly. However, the giant casually applies just a little more force and obliterates his weapon like it was made of breadsticks. When his weapon shatters like a cheap souvenir, he briefly considers filing a complaint. Except there's no customer service in dungeons. Though his weapon is destroyed, Diane has successfully drawn the giant's attention toward himself. This distraction gives Eldora the perfect opportunity. Seizing the moment, she clenches her fist tightly, gathering immense power. She prepares to unleash a devastating attack, one fueled by the strength of the dragon within her. Eldora charges up her ultimate attack, Rekti Arm Vidrashin. Diane wonders if powerful techniques come with a naming manual. He briefly considers shouting his own move, Super Healer Slash, but wisely decides against it. With an explosive burst of energy, she launches herself forward and delivers a crushing punch to the giant. The sheer force of her strike is overwhelming, charged with her dragon-infused power. The giant, unable to withstand the impact, is sent hurtling backward. The ground shakes violently as it crashes down, sending a massive cloud of dust and debris into the air. As our healer tries to look cool and composed, but a very undignified coughing fit ruins the moment. As the dust begins to settle, Diane stands there, staring in disbelief at the fallen giant. He is amazed at the sheer might Eldora possesses. Meanwhile, Eldora, with a triumphant grin, turns to him and playfully remarks that they have finally taken it down. Thick smoke fills the air, making it difficult to see clearly. Diane, still catching his breath, turns to Eldora and asks if she has truly finished off the giant. Eldora, scanning the battlefield, replies with certainty that she has not yet dealt the final blow. Before they can react further, the damaged giant slowly begins to rise again. Blood pours from its mouth like a never-ending waterfall, a gruesome sight that leaves both warriors momentarily stunned. But they quickly regain their focus, realizing that at any moment the giant could strike again. The monstrous foe grips its massive sword, preparing to charge at them once more. However, just as it lifts the weapon, its grip falters and the sword slips from its hand. The force of Eldora's punch was so immense that the giant is struggling to maintain control of its own body. Observing this, Eldora confidently states that she must have miscalculated earlier, because now it is clear that the giant has been defeated. Victory is finally theirs. But just as she speaks those words, Diane's instincts scream at him. In a split second, he moves, pushing Eldora aside. His eyes widen as he realizes the truth. This giant is still alive and has been waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He thinks to himself, this guy, he was hiding his killing intent and aimed for when they drop our guard. Was him making his weapon disappear also part of his plan to give us a false sense of security? Understanding that an S-ranked boss can exploit even the smallest opening, Diane braces himself. Without warning, the giant lunges at him, its overwhelming presence filling the space with murderous intent. Eldora, noticing the danger, calls out to warn him. But Diane, rather than facing the attack head-on, suddenly sprints toward the nearby wall. Using his enhanced agility, he runs up the surface with surprising ease, swiftly escaping the reach of the charging giant. As he moves, he feels something incredible. His body is lighter than ever before, more responsive than it has ever been. He thinks whether it's newfound strength or if skipping breakfast this morning really made that much of a difference. The giant, unrelenting in its attack, swings its massive sword with such force that it slices clean through the very wall Dian was just on. But Dian is faster. Using the momentum from his movement, he propels himself off the wall with a powerful jump, twisting midair as he gathers energy into his fist. As flames burst from his punch, for a brief moment, Dian envisions himself as some legendary martial artist. If only someone had told him earlier that he could actually throw a flaming punch, he definitely would have tried this on Segret. In an instant, he closes the distance between himself and the giant, landing a devastating punch directly into its massive frame. The sheer impact is so overwhelming that the giant collapses on the spot, unable to withstand the blow. As the dust settles, Dian stares at his own trembling fist, wondering if he's secretly been a battle prodigy this whole time or if Eldora's influence is just that powerful. He grips his own hand, feeling the lingering force from his own attack, and acknowledges to himself this was truly reckless. As Dian begins to fall, there's a brief moment where he thinks he might land dramatically like a hero. Eldora swiftly catches him, steadying him before he can hit the ground. Concerned, she immediately asks if he is all right. Despite his body trembling, he smiles with relief and assures her that he is fine. Eldora looks at him and remarks that this time, the boss must truly be finished. She then thanks him again for saving her life. They both turn their attention toward the fallen giant, noticing the sheer extent of the damage. The monster's skull is completely shattered, a direct result of Dian's devastating punch. But instead of taking the credit, Dian insists that this victory belongs to Eldora. If she had not attacked when she did, he would not have survived. Suddenly, a sharp pain courses through his body. He winces as the overwhelming sensation spreads through his limbs. Eldora observes his discomfort and explains that his body has not yet fully adapted to the dragon's blood. As the pain intensifies, Dian processes the information, realizing that the power granted by the dragon's blood is not something easily controlled. But even as the thought crosses his mind, he refuses to let it weaken his resolve. Determined, he focuses on healing himself, but then his eyes fall on Eldora. She sits on the ground, her head resting on her knees, looking troubled. Concerned, he approaches her, and she quietly apologizes. On the other side of the dungeon, atop a ruined structure on a hill, Yuki suddenly materializes as the teleportation magic takes effect. Confused, she looks around in surprise, realizing that she is now outside the dungeon. A single thought immediately strikes her. If she has been transported out, it can only mean one thing. Someone has conquered the dungeon boss. Her mind races as she tries to determine who could have done it. Her first suspicion falls on the 3 A-ranked adventurers who had betrayed Dian earlier, but almost immediately, she dismisses the thought. A dungeon of this level is far beyond their capabilities. They could never hope to conquer it. Shaking her head, she decides it does not matter who did it. What matters now is finding Dan. She knows that when a dungeon is cleared, all remaining adventurers inside are forcefully transported to nearby locations. That means if Dian is still alive, he must have been transferred somewhere close as well. With renewed determination, she sets off, her heart heavy with emotions. The thought of not finding him here does not deter her. If he is not nearby, she will search for him no matter where he may be. Meanwhile, on the other side, Dian and his companion Eldora also emerge from the dungeon's teleportation. As they regain their senses, Eldora notices something alarming, blood trickling from Dian's nose. Concerned, she quickly asks if he is all right. Dian, unfazed, heals himself before reassuring her. She then questions if this happened because of her, but Dian explains the real reason. Just before they were transported, he had heard a voice coming from the sword. The moment he took it in his hands, it had touched his nose, causing the bleeding. Eldora seems confused by this explanation, so Dian clarifies that none of this is her fault. He recalls the voice he had heard in his mind, repeating the words clearly in his head, Divine Sword, Schwartz. Wrapping the weapon carefully in cloth, he contemplates the situation. Dwelling on things I don't understand won't get me anywhere anyway, he thinks to himself, so it's fine if we just go and find someone who understands this stuff. His mind briefly drifts to Yuki. He knows that she does not like to brood over things either. Now that he has survived and returned, he is determined to find her. But a new thought arises. His entire life, he has depended on Yuki. It is possible that by now she has grown even stronger, perhaps even advancing to higher ranks without him. His thoughts shift toward the three traitors. Should he tell Yuki about them? If she knew what they had done, she would surely have their party disbanded. But that might only push them toward an even more dangerous path, making them more unpredictable. Moreover, disrupting their party might not be beneficial for Yuki's own journey. In the end, he decides it is better to let Yuki continue her adventure with her balanced team. Yet deep down, he knows he cannot rely on her forever. The more he thinks about it, the more exhausted he feels. Pushing these thoughts aside, he turns to Eldora and suggests that they start moving. There is a town nearby, and they should head there first. Curious, Eldora asks how far it is. Diane estimates that if they start walking now, they could reach it by nightfall. That is why most adventurers prefer to travel with horses. As soon as she hears this, Eldora makes a swift decision. Without hesitation, she transforms into her dragon form and confidently declares that if he simply gives her the directions, they will reach the town within an hour. Diane, caught mid-step, just blinks at her, thinking that they don't have to obey normal travel rules when one of us is a dragon. He, however, immediately objects. If they travel like this, they will attract unnecessary attention far too quickly. And that could be dangerous. Eldora, with a polite and curious tone, asks if the real reason he refuses is that he does not want to ride on her back. At her words, Diane stiffens, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Reluctantly, he climbs onto her back. Trying to mask his nervousness, he instructs her to fly as high as possible to avoid being seen and to maintain a slow, steady pace since this is his first time experiencing such a ride. In response, she sweetly reassures him that don't worry, she will be gentle. Since it's his first time, there's a long pause, as he, horrified, immediately yells to stop talking like that. And Eldora, of course, finds this hilarious. As Eldora soars through the sky, she activates a protective barrier around them, a draconic veil, forming an invisible shield that encases them both. Diane immediately notices the change. The biting cold that had been chilling him moments ago disappears, and breathing at this altitude suddenly feels effortless. A wave of comfort washes over him, making him wonder how such a thing is even possible. Curious, he blinks and mutters that this is suspiciously pleasant. Is she sure this isn't some kind of luxury travel scam? Eldora was about to say that this first ride is free. After that, she starts charging. But instead, she calmly explains that she created the barrier for him, knowing that since this is his first time flying like this, it would likely be difficult for him. However, she adds that if he fully realizes the potential of the powers he carries within him, such difficulties will become trivial. She assures him that she will teach him how to use them properly. Hearing this, Diane glances at his hands, wondering what exactly he is capable of with these newfound abilities. Eldora reminds him that just as he defeated the dungeon boss before, there are many more feats he can accomplish. But she notes that he has yet to master his powers completely and still has a long way to go in becoming truly strong. Lost in thought, Diane finally shares what has been on his mind. He expresses his ambition to use these abilities to conquer the most difficult dungeon in existence, the one that every adventurer dreams of overcoming. He acknowledges that these 3 dungeons are considered nearly impossible to clear, but even so, he wants to achieve this dream. Eldora listens to him and assures him that she will always stand by his side. Grateful, Diane thanks her, and together, they continue their flight, soon reaching their destination, a town named Regan. As they descend near the town, they land just outside its entrance and make their way toward the gate. Eldora is visibly excited at the thought of embarking on a new adventure. However, as they approach, a guard steps forward, stopping them with a suspicious gaze. He demands to know whether they have encountered a dragon nearby, explaining that a merchant who had just passed through reported seeing a shadow in the sky. Eldora mutters in his ears that does she look human enough. Then Diane and Eldora quickly deny it, attempting to appear as natural as possible. To further ease suspicion, Diane presents his adventurer's license. The guard examines it before informing them that the eastern gate is currently under high alert. They are permitted to enter the town, but for now, leaving is not an option. The guard makes sure they understand the situation, and they agree before stepping inside. Once inside, they take in the town's beauty. The streets are lively, filled with people chatting and enjoying each other's company. It is a warm, welcoming place, a stark contrast to the dangerous dungeon they had just escaped. As they walk, Eldora whispers to Diane, voicing her suspicion that the guard's warning was about her. Diane quickly hushes her, reminding her to keep quiet to avoid drawing any unwanted attention. She leans close to his ear and promises that she will not fly again unless there is an emergency. Diane agrees that it is the best course of action, and they continue moving forward. However, unnoticed by them, a man nearby listens intently to their conversation. As they walk, Diane suddenly turns to Eldora with another concern, her clothing. Since the moment they left the dungeon, she has been wearing only the robe he gave her, and it is about time she gets something more suitable. He tells her that she needs to change into proper clothes. Eldora, however, refuses outright. She clings to the robe, stating that it was given to her by Diane and even smells like him. Because of that, she does not want to part with it. Diane is completely taken aback by her response. He quickly explains to her that wearing clothes is a basic human custom and an essential part of fitting into society. Gesturing around them, he points out that every single person in town is dressed. He warns her that standing out too much could cause unnecessary problems, especially in her case. Reassuring her, he promises that she does not have to get rid of the robe permanently. As long as she wears proper clothes, he will let her keep it. Eldora simply tilts her head thinking, is it really a need? Or just a suggestion? Diane groans, realizing this conversation is going to be way harder than he thought, and she agrees to find some new clothes. She disappears inside a shop to change while Diane waits. When she finally steps out in her new outfit, she excitedly shows him, declaring that the clothes are extremely cute. She looks radiant, the new attire suiting her perfectly, making her appearance even more charming. When Eldora exits the store, she wastes no time in airing her grievances to him. She candidly voices her discomfort, wondering if she should attempt squeezing into another dress. Diane, in his unflappable manner, informs her that he's all out of options because this was the final size left. Curious, Eldora asks him if humans really need to cover themselves so thoroughly. Diane affirms that they do, explaining that failing to do so could lead to problems. Hearing this, Eldora sighs in disappointment, thinking that humans have very fragile rules, and begins eating the food Diane had bought. However, after taking a few bites, she frowns and remarks that this is terrible. Do humans really eat this? Diane explains that this was all he could afford with the little money he had, and now he will have to gather more funds. Eldora dramatically feels like she's being punished, but from Diane's point of view, she's just experiencing poverty. Eldora, intrigued, inquires how he plans to get these funds. Diane answers confidently, revealing his occupation, stating that as an adventurer, his job is to conquer dungeons, suppress monsters, and undertake similar tasks. This sparks another thought in Eldora's mind, and she asks whether defeating the dungeon boss earlier was also part of his job. Diane confirms, explaining that it was as she said, but since he left the party that originally took the request, claiming the reward might be difficult. He continues, stating that they could sell some of the items they obtained, but since they retrieved their most valuable item after defeating the boss of an S-rank dungeon, he wants to save it as a last resort. Ultimately, their only choice is to do what adventurers do best. Eldora suddenly calls out to Dan, announcing that she wants to become an adventurer too. She expresses her desire to learn more about his profession. Diane tells her that to do so, she will need to acquire a license. With that, they head towards the Adventurers Guild head office. Upon arrival, Diane informs her that all adventurers come here to register and get their licenses. Inside the office, a woman named Sidri sits at her desk. Eldora looks towards her and asks Diane whether this lady will be the one handling her registration. Diane reassures her, stating that Sidri will not ask about her race, so there is no need to worry. As they approach, Sidri welcomes them warmly and inquires about the registration process. Excited, Eldora steps forward, eagerly confirming her intent to register. Sidri then explains all the formalities required. She tells Eldora that she will need to provide her personal history because criminals and indentured slaves are not allowed to become adventurers. This is also why the adventurer's license functions as an identification card. Eldora looks at the registration form, but despite her efforts, she is unable to understand any of it. Seeing her struggle, Diane offers to fill it out for her. Sidri permits him to do so, and Eldora watches as he completes the form. When Diane reaches the section asking for her age, he writes down 18. However, Eldora insists that she is much older. Diane quickly hushes her, telling her that she is turning 19 soon, and that's final. Once the form is completed, they hand it over to Sidri, who reviews it carefully. Afterward, Sidri instructs Eldora to drop a bit of her blood into a small bowl. Eldora follows the instructions, and as soon as the drop falls in, Sidri begins chanting a spell. A magical light emerges from the bowl, illuminating the surroundings. When the process is complete, Sidri announces that there are no previous records of Eldora, and with that, she finalizes the registration and hands over Eldora's adventurer license. Eldora is overjoyed at receiving her license, but her excitement is interrupted when Sidri asks for the registration fee. Hesitating, Eldora turns to Diane and asks what to do since she has no money. Noticing her uncertainty, Sidri asks if they are short on funds. Diane admits that they are indeed facing financial difficulties. Understanding their situation, Sidri proposes an alternative solution. She offers a method where a certain amount could be deducted from the rewards they receive after completing each quest, eliminating the need for immediate payment. While discussing this, Diane acknowledges that the most important thing is that Eldora has officially become an adventurer. He congratulates her, and Eldora beams with happiness. Sidri climbs onto a bench, searches for something, then introduces a new rank examination system. Curious, Diane asks for details. She explains that beyond the 6 adventurer ranks, F to A, there is a 7th, the highest of all. Since all newcomers start at F rank, the influx of registrants has made the system disorganized. To address this, the guild now has experienced adventurers judge new applicants' fighting abilities, allowing some to start at a higher rank based on performance. Hearing this, Diane thinks to himself that although it is not as if F-rank quests are infinite, if too many adventurers are stuck at the bottom with no available quests, the guild will struggle to collect registration fees from those who cannot afford them. Sidri, noticing Diane's contemplation, confidently states that she could do them a favor regarding the examination. She explains that A-rank adventurers or higher will serve as judges, though since it is just a test, they will be instructed to hold back as much as possible. Then she poses a question, whether they are interested in taking this challenge. Just as they are discussing the matter, a sudden commotion erupts. From the second floor of the guild, an adventurer leaps down and lands in the middle of the room, capturing everyone's attention. The man is none other than Brandal, and it is clear from his demeanor that he has arrived to stir up trouble, as if this is a routine for him. Diane, seeing this, thinking, was that necessary? Couldn't he have just walked downstairs like a normal person? But he does not seem like a normal person at all. His gaze soon falls upon Eldora, and he approaches her with an unsettling smirk. He comments on her beauty, stating that she is a fine woman. Then, with a sly tone, he makes an offer. If she joins his party, he will grant her an A-rank position. Sidri, displeased, warns Brandal against making such proposals. He simply laughs it off, claiming that he is only joking. He then turns to Sidri, and with an arrogant smirk, declares that if someone as great as himself, an A-rank adventurer, were to take things seriously, the guild staff would not even dare to oppose him. Diane, standing nearby, listens to all of this. He observes how A-rank adventurers like Brandal tend to be troublesome compared to lower-ranked adventurers. They take on B-rank quests, conquer dungeons solo, and even hunt monsters that only appear in A-rank dungeons. This means Brandal must have accomplished such difficult feats alone, proving his strength. Eldora interrupts his thoughts by asking if Brandal simply wishes to fight her. Brandal confirms her suspicion and then turns to Diane, asking whether Eldora is his party member and what his rank is. Diane, slightly embarrassed, admits that he is a B rank. Hearing this, Brandal mocks him, calling him a small fry. He expresses surprise that someone like Diane managed to achieve B rank, sarcastically commenting that his face looks like someone begging for mercy. Randall then turns back to Eldora, offering her a place in his party. He promises that if she joins, she will be granted a B-rank position immediately. Furthermore, in a sinister tone, he implies that as long as she keeps him satisfied, he will provide her with good food. Eldora immediately realizes that Diane's warnings about people like Brandal were correct. Anger surges through her, and she refuses his offer. Diane, concerned, suggests that they postpone the rank examination, but Eldora is furious. She declares that she wants to fight, as she cannot forgive Brandal for mocking Diane. Brandal bursts into laughter, finding her words amusing. However, when he hears that she truly refuses to forgive him, his expression darkens. He asks if she genuinely believes she can defeat him. Without hesitation, Eldora responds affirmatively. Brandal, now serious, issues a challenge. As an adventurer, he acknowledges her courage in facing the unknown, but the fight is no longer a joke. The entire guild office erupts into excitement, with onlookers anxious about what is about to unfold. With a commanding voice, Brandal announces to the guild staff that Eldora has declared her wish to fight him and demands that they prepare the training grounds immediately. As he taunts her, Eldora tells Diane to wait for her, assuring him that she will return shortly after finishing this fight. Despite Diane's concern, she tells him not to worry. She has no intention of taking Brandol's life. Sidri, watching everything unfold, questions the guild master about allowing Brandol to act as the judge. The guild master responds that while she does not personally approve, she finds the situation interesting. She is curious to know where Eldora, a newcomer who dared to accept such a challenge, has come from.
Here I am, know it's been a while. I was in denial about my love. Here I stand, I know I walked away.